Well, if your pet has been packing on the pounds or doesn't seem to have the same zip, it could be about more than just age. Veterinarian Dr. Marty Hobson joins us for our continuing series, Pets and People. Good morning, Marty.
Good morning, Matt.
Welcome back. In the last couple of times you've been by, we've been talking about issues facing our aging pets here in our Pets and People column. And so we're actually going inside our pets this morning. What did you want to talk about?
I wanted to talk about a really important organ. It's a gland called the thyroid gland. We've probably all heard about it, but maybe we don't even know what it does.
And what does it do?
Well, the short answer is it controls metabolism. So it's a gland. It's a pair of glands, actually, and it's located in pets and humans on either side of your windpipe. And the name comes from the ancient Greek word for shield, because it's sort of like two little shields. It's the shape of it. I always, I'm interested in where the words come from. So that produces a hormone called thyroxine. And that hormone regulates almost all your body functions, all your cardiac stuff, respiratory functions, how we metabolize food, our nervous system and how it reacts. And I read that it's a good analogy is like the carburetor of a car. So the carburetor controls the flow of gas to be burned, and that makes the car go faster or slower. And the thyroid releases thyroid hormone, and that adjusts the metabolism of the body up and down to speed up or to slow down.
And so what can go wrong then with the thyroid in our pets?
Well, it's a pretty common issue for older pets to develop a problem. And a really interesting thing is that dogs develop one problem and cats develop the opposite problem.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. So
cats and dogs really are opposites.
Some people would have us believe so. So this time we're going to talk about dogs, and what we see is hypothyroidism. So hypo means too little or not enough, and that comes from the Greek word meaning under. And the thyroid is not producing enough hormone to regulate the metabolism in the correct way. So we see this in middle-aged to older dogs, and the average age is about 7 or 8 years that we see this. And that's caused by the thyroid cells in the gland. They're being destroyed gradually, usually by the animal's own immune system. And that's where things get a little complicated.
And what kind of indicators, what kinds of signs would we see here?
Well, since it regulates so much that's in the body, there's not really a system that isn't affected. It really affects everything. But the classic signs are low energy and weight gain, or your dog's a little overweight and you just can't seem to get those winter pounds off in the summertime. And as you know, lots of people are diagnosed with hypothyroidism too, and probably can relate to these signs. We also often see skin problems. About 90% of dogs with hypothyroidism have some kind of skin problem. So a really thin hair coat, like their hair falls out, which is normal, but then the hair follicles aren't growing, so their coat gets very thin. And seborrhea, kind of a greasy dandruff, and that's because, your skin cells they're supposed to circulate and shed off and new ones grow, and that's not happening. The turnover isn't happening properly. And sometimes skin infections that are hard to treat. And their skin can get really thick and sometimes has patches of black pigment in it. And often the skin of their faces gets almost a look that's a little bit swollen with extra skin folds. But almost any problem that arises in a middle-aged or older dog, we would recommend testing the thyroid to see if it's involved.
And does this occur in all breeds, or are there just certain ones impacted by this?
Oh, it's really genetic and breed-related. So even though we don't see the signs until middle age, there's many young dogs that are of a breed that's going to be predisposed to hypothyroidism. And the interesting thing is, this is probably our fault as humans, as we were trying to make those breeds in the past and selecting for certain traits.
It's our fault.
Yeah. So the classic poster child for hypothyroidism is the golden retriever.
I have one of those.
I know you have one at home. So historically, this is just an example. We were selecting for dogs that were easygoing and good companions. But the more they selected for those traits, the more they were looking for the couch potatoes and thinking that's a really good dog to use in my breeding stock, the more they may have been selecting for dogs that had thyroid problems. And unfortunately, there aren't any tests that you can do on a young dog to tell if it will develop a thyroid problem later. But the good news is it's really easy to manage.
And how do we test for it?
So as part of older animals just going in for a regular checkup, we always recommend blood work. Part of that would probably include monitoring the thyroid. And then if we see low thyroid levels, sometimes we have to go back and do a more intensive blood test where we measure a few different things just to confirm it. And an important point is that the thyroid hormone, it can be really low just if you're sick with something else. So if you see a low thyroid level, it's not like you can say, wow, I've got my diagnosis. You kind of have to do a bit of a double check to confirm it.
And then how is it treated?
Well, once we confirm it, we can easily just give extra thyroid hormone, just like taking a vitamin supplement, really. It's available as a tablet, but we don't know how each dog is going to respond. There's no one magic level. So the dog needs to come back after a few weeks. We remeasure those blood levels to see if you're in the right amount and either decrease or increase the medication. And after that, even blood tests should be done every 3 to 6 months just to make sure everything's kind of cruising along. So as you can tell, it's not something that we just fix and then you're done. You never have to come back.
This is lifetime treatment we're talking about.
It is.
And as you've been talking, Marty, I've been scratching somebody's ears over here, and this is your dog, Jake, who always accompanies you when you come in.
Yeah, so
He's a sweetheart.
You might not have guessed, but Jake actually has hypothyroidism.
Right.
So he is 11, but a few years ago when he was about 8 or 9, a lot of people said, oh, he's getting a little heavy and he's an older dog. And don't you think you better, check his thyroid? And being a veterinarian, sometimes we're like the saying about the cobbler's children have no shoes. So I said, oh no, he's just getting older and not exercising as much. And finally I was convinced. And his thyroid level, Matt, was so low, they basically couldn't find it. It was lower than the bottom level of our testing reference range.
So Jake's on medication now.
He is, and I brought his medication in so that you can see just how tiny these pills are. I'm holding one up. I don't know if you can even see it.
And so you just sneak one of those in?
It's really easy to give, and it's so small that it can fit into a piece of cheese or a piece of bread. Jake, will you come here? Come here. So I'm just putting it into a little bread crust here.
He's
very happy.
He smells bread.
Oh, okay. So I'm just going to give him his treatment for this morning, and he gets it once a day, and
he
we're done.
laps it up, and it's done.
Yeah, no problem at all. So another kind of fun story about Jake is that my husband knew that he had been diagnosed with hypothyroidism, but it took me a day or two to fill the prescription and get the pills. So he didn't know when we were starting. So I gave Jake his first ever thyroid tablet, and a few hours later, my husband came home, and the first thing he said was, did you start Jake on his thyroid medication? Because for the first time in months, he was running out to the car in the driveway and, jumping up and saying, he was always a friendly dog, but we just hadn't noticed because it was so slow, his real decline into being a more lethargic, low energy dog. And I just found that really funny that someone who knows him so well could just pinpoint the exact moment that I gave the medication. So it was a real quick turnaround.
Yeah.
For some people, it may take a few weeks before you do see those changes. And certainly the hair coat and the weight loss is going to take months to come back.
Different story for cats, though, and we'll talk about that next time you're by.
That's right.
Marty, thanks.
You're welcome.
Veterinarian Marty Hobson with Pets and People, and our thanks to Marty and to the Companion Animal Welfare Initiative for their help in putting this series together with us.